talk about the name change today, but when we're finished up, if you have any questions about not only the name change but anything else, be happy to try to answer those for you. But the name change, I think that's a pretty big deal. It's not only a big deal for Homestead, but it's also a big deal for the community of Beatrice, as well as the state of Nebraska, and really our nation as a whole. Across the nation, I believe there are like 59 National Historical Parks, and now there is, I believe, 60, and we're number 60 on that list. And it's something that just didn't happen overnight. It was actually something that has been in the works for a number of years, and in fact, I want to say it's probably close to 10 years when the seed to change the name was first planted. And that actually started from a survey that was completed in 2009 at the monument, when we learned that 89% of first-time visitors to the park were actually confused by the park's name, and they didn't know what to expect, and they were looking for statues, they were looking for faces, they were looking for plaques, they were looking for actually a monument. And for those of you that have been to the monument, you know, where is it? And so we figured, and we recognize that Homestead is not a place where there's just one thing to do or one place to see. There's multiple things to see, multiple things to do. It's a dynamic place, and we recognize that having the title National Historical Park would better represent what we are, from the standpoint that it's a site that's rich with natural, cultural, and recreational opportunities or resources, and so we're grateful that the Friends of Homestead, and I know that there are a number of members of the Friends of Homestead in here that are currently on the board, like Rich, but there's also a number that are no longer currently on the board, but they were involved in discussions long ago about this, and so we're grateful for all the work that they've done through the years to get us to this point, as well as we're grateful to the city of Beatrice, Gage, the county, Gage County, Nebraska Tourism, and all the other groups, Senator Dorn, individuals that helped us get to this point and champion that name change, and then working with the Nebraska congressional delegation, because it's actually Congress that has to make the change. And 4 times in the park's history, there's actually been legislation that's been introduced and approved for Homestead. And the first one was with, of course, the creation of the Homestead National Monument of America in 1936. And then in the 1970s, when the Freeman School addition was brought online. And then shortly after the turn of the century, I believe it was in 2002, Congress authorized the expansion of the boundaries of the park to include the Graff property, which allowed for the construction of the Homestead Heritage Center. And then here in January, when Congress voted on and the President authorized and approved the name change from Homestead National Monument of America to Homestead National Historical Park. And I think that it's going to have a tremendous impact, like I said earlier, not only on the park, but on the community and the state as a whole. And I'm talking about not only like community or state pride, since now Nebraska has a National Historical Park, but also from the economic side of it. And if the trends for this name change continues that we've seen from other name changes, we're going to see an uptick in visitation, and with an uptick in visitation, we're going to see an uptick in visitor spending, and that's going to be bringing more money into our local community and our county. And it's going to be not only money spent at our gas stations and our restaurants, but also other retail places. And as everybody knows, the more money that's spent, the more money that changes hands. And so we hope that once we get past the COVID here and we start to see a surge in visitation, we see a little more in a surge because of that name change. But I'm going to let Rich talk about the process that brought us to this point, because I think some of the things that Rich will share with you, like the numbers of times that it was discussed and all the different places the bill passed, the name change bill passed and all. I think that it's really an example of our government at work. I know at times we like to make jokes about our government and like things take so long, and some things do take time. But anyway, I think what Rich is going to share with us that you're going to see, and you're going to have a better understanding of exactly how government works and really how fortunate we are to have a new name. So with that, Rich.
Thanks, Mark. Mark mentioned I've been on the Friends of Homestead committee probably about 3 years now. It's probably about when you guys were leaving, I came on. And I was kind of given I don't say it was kind of a task force job, but we kind of decided that the name change was going to be now brought up again as a priority. Back in 2008, a bill was actually introduced to change the name clear back then by the Friends, and it did not pass. And so it's been kind of thought about, talked about, milled around, different people get elected and that sort of thing. So in 2018, Mark's staff can't go out and actually solicit things like this to be done. An organization like the Friends are tasked with doing that. So we had a meeting with Adrian Smith and his staff at the Homestead, and myself and the president of Friends of Homestead, Don Ferdinand, sat down with him and tried to convince him the reason why the name change was important. A lot of things that Mark already mentioned to you. The main thing was the survey of 89% of the first-time people going there were confused by the name. And I've got a story a little bit later I might tell that personally happened to me. I found that to be true. But also, the name change itself is encompassing what's actually out there. It's not just a monument. People go out there for a monument, and you wouldn't think that because we know what's out there, but people coming in from out of town, out of state or whatever, they have no idea. And they see a monument, they say, oh, I can spend 15 minutes, take a picture, and I'm gone. Well, once they get there, they know they have, can spend a half a day or a day, whatever. So we sat down with Congressman Smith and his people. They became very excited. They became very determined to introduce a bill, but they were very determined not to have the bill not include other things. It's just going to be the name change. So we did that, and we solicited at that time support from local communities. They asked us to do that. We asked the City Council, the Gage County Board of Supervisors, Engage, the Chamber, Main Street, our State Senator Dorn, State Senator Slama from the East, all provided letters of support for this after they heard our pitch of why we were wanting to do this. So that was something I think very important that helped get this a little bit more notoriety maybe in Washington than just another name change bill coming forth. So we started gathering that support, and then there was a bill introduced in the House of Representatives. And I kind of got a civic lesson with this whole mess about how to get a bill passed, what it has to do, and when they tell you something happens is not exactly what you think it is in Washington. I'll give you an example of that in just a little bit. So Congressman Smith introduced a bill, 1472, in the House of Representatives. All the congressional delegation that we have in Washington backed all of our bills. So I think that was important. It passed the committee, it passed through the House, and then once it passes through the House, a similar bill is introduced in the Senate. That has to be passed. And then they get together and say, okay, this is what this bill says, this is what that bill says. They get together and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. I later found out that only 1% of the bills ever introduced in Washington ever get passed. 1%. Which, if I'd have known that when Mark first convinced me to start doing this, I probably would have said, you're on your own, buddy. But 1% of the bills, and I think there's good and bad reasons for both of those. But so in November of 2019, the House passed our bill. And they kind of just hands it over to the Senate. Well, Senator Sass then becomes our point person in the Senate. And they introduce a bill. What has to happen is confusing to me, but I understand the process now, is the bill goes through the committee, gets passed at the committee, it goes to the floor, and it's up to the senators to bring them up. Well, as the bills get bunched up and the time for the Senate is less, these bills get backed up. And so the person that has really all the power is the Speaker of the Senate, Mitch McConnell. He can go in there and say, okay, I want this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill discussed. If there's no objection, they become law. That's kind of where our bill was getting to be. I was continually talking to Senator Sass's office, and they were very, very, very helpful. So when this bill got to Mitch McConnell's level, there was somebody that objected. So I, in my naivety, said, okay, hey, there's somebody objecting, have them call me, I'll answer any questions you want. And they said, no. This is a senator that objects with Senator Sass for whatever reason, and it has nothing to do with your bill, but he's objected. So I said, okay, so Senator Sass will take care of it? Yeah, Senator Sass will take care of it. Well, evidently he did by the outcome. So I kept saying, and I think they understood, I'm naive in this, tell me what we need to do. When it finally got all done and passed, I thanked them and wrote some letters to the staff people that we work with. And they said, basically what I did was was an advocate for this bill and then it kept the process moving. But in Washington, things go with however they want to go. If you're aware, in Washington, there's 2-year cycles for any of these bills to get passed. Every 2-year cycle. If your bill does not get passed December 31st, at the end of those 2 years, you have to start all over. And we were getting to that point. And Mark would call me every now and then, Rich, what do you think? What do you think? And I'd email Washington, and this is what they tell me, Mark. And so I started listening. After each time the Senate was in session, Mitch McConnell or his designate would stand up and say, start listing bills, and they would pass them. I listened and I listened and I listened, and ours never came up. Well, New Year's Eve comes up, and I'm finally out to be able to go out and do things. And New Year's Day comes up. Mark texts me, goes, hey, I think something happened. My office is telling me to get ready for a name change. I said, really? So I went back and listened to the tape. Mitch McConnell gets up, and if you remember the climate in Washington, D.C. in December of 2020, pretty pretentious. And I didn't think anything Senator Sass would have his name on would ever get passed through Trump's office, because they weren't liking each other at that point. December 31st, I get on, I watch the tape. The absolute last thing that Mitch McConnell brings up is our bill. The absolute last thing. Because the next words out of his mouth after it passed was, we're adjourning. So we were extremely fortunate there. And to get at that point, I think I just kept texting and emailing Mitch McConnell's office. Hey, this is important. Kind of give him a reason why. Well, to get to the point after the Senate passed it, COVID hit and the whole dang Washington shut down. So there was like 3 or 4 months that there was nothing happening. So it didn't look like our bill was going to get passed. And then when it did get passed, the president had 10 days to sign the bill. Well, I can sure he sees a bill from Senator Sass in Nebraska, and like I said, they weren't playing well at that time, President Trump, and I thought, okay, this is a death knell, it's not going to get signed, which means it would have to again start all over the whole process. Well, Mark kept calling me, and I kept calling Mark, and I don't know what we're doing. And of course, then at one point, the president goes down to Mexico to look at his wall, and Mark says, well, he should be out signing our bill. I said, I know, Mark, but just give him a chance to get home.
Don't tell all of our secrets.
Yeah. But anyway, it got to the day before the last day he could have signed it, and he signed the bill, which made it law. And so, again, armed with the idea that only 1% of the bills ever get passed, I probably would never have done this, but it was very enlightening for me. And the main purpose is because the name change actually describes what's out there. It's a park. It's a historical park. It's a historical designation of something that happened that was credited with being probably one of the most important bills ever passed by the Senate to inhabit the western part of the United States. It was to get people out here, give them land. And so it was important for me to get it done that way, but also for the Friends of Homestead. They've been working on it for oh boy, 13, 14 years off and on. It was really important for them to get it done too. And I was glad it got to be done. So, but it was quite a process. And COVID and, you know, breaking into the Senate, and everything else happening in Washington didn't help matters any, but it got passed. So, anything to add, Mark?
I think it's important just to say thank you to everybody that was involved, and thanks to the community and Rich for championing it. I have no secrets now, and 'cause I'm not supposed to lobby, and I can't lobby, and I don't lobby, and I'm just grateful that the friends championed that effort for us on our behalf. But I think it's really exciting, and I know from the standpoint of changing over things, we've been engaged with changing the name on the internet, on signage, on brochures, and I don't know if we knew how many places the name of the park was, but we're finding out now, and we'll continue the process well into next year. Well, we're already making very good headway and all, but anyway, again, thanks to Rich, the friends, and everybody else that helps.
And I don't know who to ask this to, but you said 2008 is when you guys started. Okay, so have any idea why it got shot down in those years? Was there any non-political reason?
I don't know if it was back in 2008, Senator Nelson and Congressman Fortenberry introduced it, and then there was, change in districting, and so then when we switched from the first district to the third district, I think there was a time, there's a period there that took place where we were educating Congressman Smith on us and trying to familiarize the park with him and him with us, and so I think that took some time, but I know of no political reason other than it just floundered there earlier. So,
And I think Congressman Smith really, he and his staff really championed this to get it as far as it did. They got it involved, and they involved the people, right people got involved with the different committees, and I think they really did the most of it.
Mark, your visitation at the National Historic Park, what's your take now on visitors starting to come back? What's your hope how that's going to work out?
right now visitation is
Because of COVID and travel and all that.
Yeah. Right now visitation is off. It was off last year and it's off significantly. I want to say it's like probably 40% off. And where we were trending around 80,000, it was closer to around 50,000 last year. But we were closed for 72 days through some of our busiest months. And we're starting to see a slow swing back up. And but we anticipate that, well, what we're hearing is the 1st of July that the gates are kind of like going to open, and the Americans are going to start traveling, and they're going to be coming in waves. So we're I'm sure that most everybody in here may have heard about the gasoline shortages they're predicting for the summer. It kind of falls into that. But even before that came across the news, we were hearing through tourism offices that they're anticipating a large uptick and a large swing with more people traveling. So we're expecting to see that happening. It's going to take us a while to get our programming back up to where it was because of COVID and because of the executive orders that we're under, and CDC guidance and state guidance and Department of Interior guidance, National Park Service guidance, plus local guidance. So we have to follow and work between all the different divisions of government and all the different offices and agencies, departments. So,
When Mark alluded to when name changes have happened in the past, the parks that have had name changes, they're increased between 10 to 30 to 40% of people visiting. because of the name change. So we hope that maybe probably wouldn't happen this year, but next year we'll start seeing that influx, increase in numbers.
I don't know who to address this to, either one, but could you explain the relationship of the Friends of the Homestead to the Homestead for some people here that may not know about that?
Well, the Friends of the Homestead was formed as a auxiliary group that assists the homestead in different things. Mark's hands are tied in a lot of things. So the reason why he was calling me, asking me what's going on, he can't lobby anybody in Washington or in the state to do those kind of things. They can't spend money on food things and that kind of thing. So the Friends of the Homestead is kind of an auxiliary group formed to be able to do those things as a benefit for the park system in Beatrice.
There's a formal agreement that's between the Friends of Homestead and the park. And I think the agreement we currently have in place is for 10 years. And within the agreement, it lays out that they have to have bylaws, and they have to have, every year review by the Park Service looking at their budget. It has in there like a donor recognition plan. We look at their records that are with the state as it relates to their 501c3. So anyway, they're a 501c3 organization, and we have specific guidelines, rules, and policies that we use and that we follow to interact with them. And we, quite frankly, we'd be dead in the water without the Friends of Homestead with so many different things. We can think back to the eclipse. We can think back to the launch of the Homestead Quarter, or even the Heritage Center project when Ross was out soliciting NPPD, or John when he was working with buying land from the Shum property, or buying the Shum property from the Enses, if that makes sense. So anyway, we wouldn't be able to do any of those things if it was not for the Friends of Homestead, because many of those things, as Rich alluded to, we can't do. We're prohibited in doing those things, but the Friends, they kind of pick up where we stop. So
It's kind of like a booster club in high school. We're doing things that in this case, they can't do, but we're supporting them however we can that way.
And I should clarify myself when I'm talking about the Shum property. For those that remember the West Court Dairy Queen, Opal Shum, she used to manage and run the Dairy Queen. When she passed away, she left a quarter of her estate to the Friends of Homestead so that they could buy land adjacent to the park. And it was to be donated to us after they find somebody to partner with them to purchase more land. So the Nebraska Environmental Trust, the Friends of Homestead worked together. They purchased 140 acres, and hopefully one of the next things, one of the next things that Congress could do is actually change the boundary of the park to include the Shum property, which is this 140 acres. And once that happens, then the land would be donated to the park, and that would allow us to expand recreational opportunities, maybe include like horseback riding, mountain biking, things like that.
Is any of that Shum property a part of the original homestead?
It's not part of the actual Daniel Freeman homestead. I believe a part of that was owned by Agnes Freeman later on, so part of it did fall under the Freeman family there. But I don't know how many folks realize, but that bur oak forester that's part of the monument, it's actually a rare plant community in Nebraska. I think they used to be pretty common, but now they're declared rare systems, and obtaining the Shum property, what the Friends are doing right now is really helping sustain that plant community with the bur oaks. So anyway, along with those, improving the recreational opportunities allow us to better manage and care for the bur oak forest, as well as the hedgerow. We see people all the time farmers removing their hedgerows for whatever reason. I know they're good reasons, but there are fewer and fewer of these hedgerows, and this hedgerow is actually on the National Register of Historic Places, and so it's on the list of classified structures in the United States. And so So having the Shum property will actually help us also do a better job of preserving and managing this hedgerow, and so from a cultural resource standpoint, it's pretty exciting for us to be able to do some different things with the hedgerow to ensure will be around for 100, 200 years from now.
So is that property adjacent to the south?
It is.
The personal thing I was gonna bring up, that Mark had given us all these statistics about why it's important to do this. The 89% of the people that came here were confused. And I thought, okay, I understood that, but in March, I was taking our foreign exchange student that was living with us into the park, to see the park. And I went up to the front door and she goes, 30 minutes ago, the president called and closed all the parks, so we couldn't go in. As I was leaving, a car was coming in, it was from Omaha. And the lady goes, oh, can we go to the homestead? We came down here because of COVID and we wanted to get a day out. And I said, well, sorry, they just closed the doors. And she goes, well, okay, just point me to the monument. I'll just get a picture of the whatever monument they have. So that really brought it to me that personally that, okay, these people are confused when they come down here by the name. And so that's another reason why we decided it was important to get it changed.
Ross just told me that 89% of the people in America are confused, period.
That's another whole survey.
Starting with him. So I'll put the plug in for becoming members of the Friends of the Homestead. It's, of course, a donation is required, but every year they'll get together, they'll invite the friends out, they'll have a program. It's a situation, until you go out there and spend some time and get involved, we just don't know what we have out there. So really consider that and get involved in the homestead, because if you're interested in history at all, it's just great out there. And you didn't bring the tractor up. So that was one of my favorite things that we did. But I know we had a program on that one time here, but the tractor from Alaska is quite a story.
And people come, they're still coming today to see the tractor. So the tractor's, it's a cool thing, and we're grateful to Dr. Ferrix and the friends for getting it to Beatrice and to the park. But yeah, I'm still amazed at the number of people that come through the front door wanting to see the tractor. So.
And being at the dedication of that tractor is what got me, I'd say I want to see what else they're doing. That's what got me on the committee.
I just want to say that the homestead has showed an immense growth in probably the last 20, 25 years. And I got to attribute that to this man standing up here, that Mark has done wonders. When I was growing up in country school, we knew there was a Homestead National Monument, but we were never taken there for a tour. I don't think we stopped in there ever. It just wasn't, it just wasn't promoted. But Mark has done a lot of work out there, and he's really got it going in the right direction. So I hope people realize how much of a jewel he is in that uniform for that homestead, because he's got it hopping and popping now.
Yep.
Well, thanks for saying that, Ross, but I don't think it's really me. I think it's the community supporting us, and it's like the friends and like with the eclipse and reaching out to the city of Beatrice and saying, hey, we need some transportation money to set up buses to haul all these tens of thousands of people that are coming to town. I don't know if they believed us at the time, but anyway, we're grateful that everybody supported us and helped us. So thanks, Ross.
I wonder if you could just take a moment and talk for a minute about Daniel Freeman.
Freeman, we know, is the first homesteader, and there's some people that want to argue that. In fact, there's the little piece of trivia that that I'm guessing that most of you don't know, but there was a person in South Dakota that said, no, actually they were the first ones, and because of that, then the state of South Dakota tried to. They wanted to see Homestead National Monument move to South Dakota, and I won't say steal the monument, but they wanted to have it moved.
There is no monument to steal, you just stole it.
That's right, steal the park. But anyway, I guess this conversation went on for quite a while until the regional director of the National Park Service at that time said, stop. It's not gonna happen. This Homestead National Monument of America is about not only Daniel Freeman, but about all homesteaders, and so it's staying where it is. But I know, yes, we believe that Freeman was the first, and we believe that from the standpoint, while he may not have been actually the first to file his papers, he was the first to follow through on submitting all of his papers and carrying out the responsibilities associated with the Homestead Act. And so I know that right now we're engaged in a really, it's a huge project where we're gathering homestead stories from throughout the nation. And they're, just to give you an idea, they're like 1.8 million people filed for claims. And then just think about the 1.8 million, because most all of them had large families. Well, so you can add that to the equation. Well, today there's an estimated over 93 million people who are descendants. That's roughly a third of our nation's population. So we always use Daniel Freeman as the starting point. And we think that in many ways, while he was a typical homesteader, in many ways he was not a typical homesteader because of, as an example, what he did with the Freeman School and how he challenged at that time the school district for reading the Bible there, and how he had he had the means and the will to take it all the way to the Nebraska Supreme Court, and then even today, where the United States Supreme Court uses that as case law when it looks at similar discussions or court rulings that are taking place. So anyway, in many ways, I think that Daniel Freeman, he was the nation's first homesteader, but also in many other ways, while being typical, he was not typical at all. He was a very unique person. And he was, I think, in many ways, maybe a person before his time.
He's buried out there too.
He is.
Yep.
And one of the things the Homestead is doing, and the friends are trying to assist with, is digitizing all those papers of all those homesteads and all those descendants, which is millions of pieces of paper. And it's an ongoing process. That's one of the things we're assisting the park in doing.
I see we're getting hooked.
So it's never good when he stands beside you, never.
No.
Any other questions real quick?
Got one, Scott?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Rich. Anything else for the cause? If not, we're adjourned.